Welcome to the TNC Random Fandom Podcast. We are here to have fun and talk all things pop culture, collecting, and nerd culture in general. Make sure you join the conversation during our live stream with our most excellent hosts, Craig Borden and Tommy Mock. Let the shenanigans begin.
Oh, yeah. Welcome to the TNC Random Fandom Podcast. I'm your host, Tommy the Macho Man Mock. And always is with me is Craig. I'm bored of being bored and boredom. How you doing there, champ?
Okay, brother, things are going pretty good. Let's power up, man. There you go. Well played, sir.
Thank you. In case you haven't figured it out, we are doing a WWE pro wrestling show today, and I had to kind of work on my Macho Man Randy Savage voice. So Craig, how the hell are you, man? What's going on?
I'm doing great, my friend. Having a wonderful, fun blast. To the wrestling nature, I had a fun time watching the Royal Rumble with the family last night. We'll talk about that. I can't believe how late that event always goes. It just goes and goes and goes. It started at 6 o'clock, but it's always a fun one every year. But to that point, things are good. Things are wonderful. And we have one of my good friends here with us this evening, too, here. So that's another win, Tommy.
Oh, yeah. Well, you brought him in. We normally wait to bring him in, but Eric the Heck, who's also it's Rosenheck, right? Is that correct?
You are 100% correct.
Okay. And Eric actually has been a fan of the show since, I would have to say, since the inception of the show. So we enjoy having fans of the show, but we also enjoy having our fandoms come through and talk about all things that they are passionate about. So I'm going to let Craig start this whole thing out. So let's have it, since you kind of screwed it up and just had him in here the whole time. We didn't give him the grandiose.
That's my other one. I apologize. Go ahead, Eric. Eric and I are friends from my other podcast, the Jay Bird Watching podcast for Blue Jays Baseball. Eric is I'll say baseball writer, for the fact that he has an awesome website that is called Definitely Not Jays Talk. But Eric Rosenheck, how the heck are you, buddy? What's up?
Well, I'm doing quite well, although I do have to correct you. I don't consider myself a baseball writer.
You have such good opinions.
Well, thank you. But Bob Elliott is a baseball writer, and Mike Wilner is a baseball writer, and Shai Davidi and Keegan Matheson and Caitlin McGrath, they're all baseball writers. I kind of consider myself a schmuck with a blog.
As long as you're happy with your blog, man, that's all that matters. And it is a good read for the Blue Jays fans out there, so I highly recommend it. But anyways, Eric, you got a wonderful topic that you're bringing with us this evening. Because when I told you about this show months ago, you were very keen on the fact that it's like, hey, we got to have a wrestling episode. We got to talk to all things WWE for an evening. And what better of a time than right after the Royal Rumble, which concluded last night.
Oh, absolutely. And it was quite a show. I'll be honest with you. I'm working my way through the show. This is the beauty of streaming, of having wrestling coming in through a streaming service, is that you can start and stop whenever you want. I wasn't ready for the 6 p.m. start time, so no sweat. When I was ready, I started watching and got through the Women's Rumble match, which was just absolutely awesome. Congratulations to Charlotte Flair. It's great to see her. Great to see Jordan.
Spoiler alert.
Well, this is the thing. Like,
it's just like a sports podcast. You better watch it when you're supposed to.
And the thing is that
Go
even
ahead.
though I got through, I watched the Women's Rumble match, and I watched the tag match between Motor City Machine Guns and DIY. Then I got really tired and had to go to bed. But you know, I see everything. I'm not afraid of the spoilers, so I'm online and I saw all the fun clips, so I have a good idea of what happened. So it was a really good show, and Charlotte got the Women's Rumble, and main event Jey Uso got the Men's Rumble, and Cody retained the title. One hell of a match. I'm looking forward to watching that match in full. And we're on the road to WrestleMania, so let's go.
100%. So it's basically WWE playoffs time is basically what the Royal Rumble always seems to kick off, is culminating in the championship, the World Series, the Super Bowl that is WrestleMania. To that point, we already have two people that are guaranteed matches in the main event on the two-night WrestleMania, and you mentioned Charlotte Flair, and you mentioned Jey Uso. The question is, which champions will they challenge? And that's going to be the fun part.
Well, it depends. Charlotte's got two really good options. She's got Rhea Ripley, who is just one of the most popular women wrestlers on the planet right now. And these two have faced off before on the WrestleMania card. So this would kind of be like a rubber match. I believe they faced each other, I want to say either 2020 or 2021 or 2022. They definitely went one-on-one in 2023. And it'd be great to see them go up one-on-one again. And then the other women's champion is Tiffany Stratton, who just won the title a few weeks ago, cashing in her Money in the Bank briefcase.
Rookie.
A rookie, and she is just phenomenal. She's I mean, this is really the golden age of women's wrestling. The performers are just so athletically gifted and so just brilliant in terms of presentation on the mic and everything. Not saying the other generations weren't that great. They were fantastic as well, but we're really seeing an elevation. Just incredible talent on WWE. And adding Jordynne Grace from TNA Impact is a huge, huge addition. So lots to look forward to.
Very much so. And Tommy, actually, you got to sink into your teeth to the Women's Royal Rumble a little bit and got to see a good taste of the crazy athleticism that Eric is talking about here. And like, I agree that flat out, this is not a ding to any other level of women's wrestling over the years, but this is a peak of 100%, I think. And to me, right now, it's almost, you can't tell athleticism between the men and the women. It is just a great thing going on. What's your thoughts?
So I actually have it on right now. So, you know, and I didn't get the opportunity to watch it, but one thing that actually kind of got me is, and being a fan from before, and I kind of petered out. I was really big into the Attitude Era, which we can talk about that era of the WWE. But going, it's like the show started and it went right into right into the Women's Royal Rumble match. There was no undercard, so I was like, holy crap, they're just getting really started in this. But seeing what I'm seeing right now, you're 100% correct. There's a lot going on. There's a lot to take in, but you're right. Each and every single one of these ladies is by far a superhuman athlete, but the way that they just kind of put their bodies on the line, and it's, you could tell that, you know, wrestling is no longer just a male sport. And I'm in awe right now with what I'm seeing. It's a far cry from the bra and panty matches from back in the day when all, you know, where pretty much the ladies were there to be kind of just, you know, ogled and you know, so, but no, this is awesome.
Yeah. Eric, I wanted to mention, as far as what a lot of people enjoy the Royal Rumble for, is one of my favorite reasons, and that is you never know who's going to come out when that buzzer hits the 0 clock. And we did get a bunch of great surprises last night, especially in the Women's Royal Rumble. I felt like there was a lot more surprises on that, including seeing one of my favorite wrestlers, even from, you know, a little bit closer to yesteryear, but not completely. But Alexa Bliss came back last night, and I was loving that every minute of it, to see her come back.
Oh, that's my favorite part of the Royal Rumble is you never know who's going to show up. And this year we had lots of great surprises, right? So Alexa Bliss, great to see her back. Trish Stratus, a WWE legend from my hometown in Toronto. She made her return. It's been a year or so since she was last in the ring. She had a great program with Becky Lynch a couple of years ago, and it was wonderful to see her back in the ring. And Nikki Bella, you know, you can look, but you can't touch. And so she came out and she did the dance, which was always over. People were big fans of that. And then on the men's side, I was so excited when I saw the clip and I heard, "Say his name and he appears. I believe in Joe Hendry." Joe Hendry, a hugely popular wrestler. He's a former musician. So he writes all his, he wrote his theme entrance, and he's, you know, in the past, he's used his singing career to cut promos on other wrestlers. And WWE, NXT, and TNA Impact have a crossover agreement right now, an official crossover agreement. So when he came out, it was absolutely bonkers. He's actually the TNA heavyweight champion, and it was just wonderful to see a huge pop from the 70,000 fans at Lucas Oil Stadium.
Yeah. And one of the ones that we knew about beforehand that got obviously a monster pop was finally hearing Mr. You Can't See Me come back in a match, John Cena. I saw him. He did pretty damn well, but came so close last night. And I don't want to ruin the surprise for you, but it was down to the neck between him and Jey Uso. It was neck and neck, the whole piece of it.
It could have gone either way. Could have gone either way. And man, did he have a promo after the match in the press conference. He is determined to be to win the title once again before he retires. This is his retirement career. His retirement year. So he's doing what's greats like Derek Jeter and CC Sabathia did. They're on the retirement tour, and his next match is going to be Elimination Chamber right here in Toronto at Skydome. And all being well, I will be there, and I'm looking forward to it.
Congrats, man!
Oh,
That's really cool.
Hopefully,
I've been to a couple of WWE matches, just like Tommy had been to one and whatnot. But I can't even imagine being at one of those pay-per-views or something like that, because the Elimination Chamber is like the freaking steel cage match on steroids. So being able to go to that match and just hope and pray that John Cena, a guy in his retirement year, actually is walking out of that cage is going to be very interesting to see, because to that point, super athletic and everything to it, but it is one of those things that you are literally caged with a bunch of animals at the end of the year. And then,
usually there's about 6 guys in there, 6 women or 6 men in there, so it's not like he has to carry the workload. The others can certainly do that as well. Although I do have to correct you, they're not pay-per-views anymore. Premium live events, PLEs.
Yeah. There is that whole thing.
Don't blame me. I just work here.
And you enlightened me to something that I didn't know. And this is something I was just kind of surprised with, because doing the baseball podcast, I get to talk to all my lovely friends up above the border in Canada all the time. And the fact that you all didn't get the nice, easy convenience of being able to get those premium live events until you told me the Netflix thing all of a sudden just turned it around for you.
Well, so sort of. We were able to get it because Sportsnet's Sportsnet Plus, which is the streaming service that Sportsnet, for those that don't know, Sportsnet is one of the Canada's sports broadcasters. They have all the Blue Jay games because Sportsnet and the Blue Jays are owned by the same telecommunications giant, Rogers.
Monster.
And anyway, up until January, Sportsnet had all WWE rights, so they would carry the premium live events on their streaming service, Sportsnet Plus, but you had to pay the premium service to get the PLEs. So I can.
So now
I
with
can,
Netflix, you all get all one bundle.
We get it all one. It all comes in with your regular Netflix account, so it's wonderful. It's fantastic. We were talking about this. We were talking about this yesterday online. When we were kids, I didn't have cable in my house, so it was all antenna. So I didn't have the pay-per-view channels, let alone be able to pay the $39.95 for a pay-per-view. And of course, the only other option was to go to a movie theater here in Canada. Well, here in Toronto, it was the Silver City Cineplex, Silver City Famous Players theaters. But that's not always a great option as well. So to be able to actually access these PLEs and previous PLEs and previous pay-per-views from yesteryear is just awesome. It's a good time to be a wrestling fan here in Canada, as I'm sure it is in the States.
I think it was funny that the conversation we had there on that note. We had cable for a lot of the my high school, middle school piece, but not really early on, where I would have enjoyed watching Hulk Hogan and WWE still and all these wonderful things. But the Attitude Era, I was at least able to watch Raw. But the cable's the cable, right? So a lot of the times we would, my brother and I would literally know what channel it would be if we had the pay-per-view, turn it on, and you could at least listen.
Probably could do that with other kind of pay-per-view shows. Am I right?
Yeah, but when you're watching a movie, it doesn't exactly have the same pop when you know trying to watch a James Bond movie back in the day or something on pay-per-view with it all scrambled.
Right, right.
Good stuff. But so Tommy, I know you, like you said, I wanted to make sure we talked more about the actual history and some of the fun around wrestling, period, and some of the characters that we got to enlighten. You mentioned the Attitude Era at the beginning, and I want to be able to talk about that specifically. So what do you recall? What were your favorite things from when you were able to watch?
So again, I'm not sure how old you are, Eric, but I kind of go back as the elder statesman of Gen X of this pod. I go back to the days of when they used to have here in the States. I'm not sure if they had it in Canada. It was called Saturday Night's Main Event, and I believe it was on NBC. And that was my first real introduction to what became the juggernaut that is WWE. I mean, we're talking when Hulk Hogan became the face for Vince McMahon and the McMahon family, and he became the he was the poster child. He's what made the WWE or the WWF at the time what it was. And I remember there was a cartoon. I think it was called Rockin' Wrestling with Hulk Hogan, or maybe it was called Hulk Hogan's Rockin' Wrestling. And you had your factions. You had the good guys and the bad guys. And I remember watching those and just being like in awe, because as a little kid, you think that this stuff is real. And my dad always kind of made fun of it and always called it as a male soap opera. And I was like, well, it's entertaining. I like watching it. It's fun. It was fun for me, and eventually things kind of moved forward. And then we started seeing all these other, television shows come out. We had Raw, and then we had SmackDown. And then it just became this like huge. And then in the 90s, for me, I had friends in the Marine Corps that were big into wrestling. So we got to the point where somebody would buy the pay-per-view, and people would chip in money. So, it wasn't on one person's cost, and everybody would just go to somebody's house, and then they would just sit there and watch, whether it be, the Royal Rumble or a WrestleMania, or some of these other huge pay-per-view events. I loved watching it. I mean, but eventually as my taste and things changed, it kind of weaned off for me. And I did always say that I was going to go to at least one live event, and I want to say it was a SmackDown event at Blue Cross Arena back in 2006. And there was and I think they were a flash in the pan tag team group called the Pep Squad. And I remember seeing them, and I think it was
I think you mean the Spirit Squad.
Spirit Squad. That's
Yeah.
it. That's it.
Yeah.
Spirit Squad. And I believe that they got slimed in our stage, I believe it was. And they just kind of went. I never heard or seen anything from them after that, pretty much, but I wasn't really into it the way I was back in the mid to late 90s and the very early 2000s. So
Well,
that's my history.
Well, the Spirit Squad sort of still lives on through Nick Nemeth, who some fans might also know as Dolph Ziggler. So he was one of the original members, and I believe he's the only one that's sort of been able to progress his career since the Spirit Squad. But yeah, they were
too, from these pictures I looked up.
I'm sorry?
What's that?
Was Billy Gunn in that too?
No,
or was
not
he
Billy.
managing him maybe?
No,
Billy
Billy
Gunn
Gunn
was
was
Generation X.
With him, the badass Billy Gunn. I'm sitting here going, "What the fudge?"
No,
Maybe he was fighting against him in these vids.
He was Degeneration X.
Yeah.
Billy
Yes,
Gunn.
but he was a lot of other things
New
since
Age
then because
Outlaws.
he's still wrestling.
Yeah, he's on A&W with his sons. He's still going.
That's too fun.
And
And
actually,
actually, he's built like a brick shit house too.
He certainly, yeah, he's in his, I think he's close to 60. Puts me to shame. Like I'm 41, and I get out of bed and I walk a few steps and I'm already in pain. So
I know what you mean.
I'm jealous of people like Billy Gunn, and Rey Mysterio is another one. Rey Mysterio is already in the
God.
WWE Hall of Fame. He's still going. He's in his 50s, and he's phenomenal. I don't think his son would agree, but it's good to see them still going. Some of these guys, they take really good care of their bodies, and they keep going, which is great. But Tommy, you brought up something very interesting because of your service in the U.S. military, and a tip of the hat to you for that. But the WWE has always been a big supporter of the troops, especially in the U.S. Forces, and several times they've done the Tribute to the Troops show. They've literally flown over to Afghanistan or other places where the soldiers are stationed, have put on shows. I'm curious to know if you ever were close to any of those shows.
I was, the only time I had any type of interaction with any other shows, I was working in Kuwait at Camp Arif John, and I think it was just a kind of like a layover before they went in theater. But it was just kind of, and that's where a lot of the USO shows kind of start out. They would start out in Kuwait, kind of get everything geared up, and then they would go into theater and go and see the troops that way. But no, I've never really had the chance to actually see it when I was in Afghanistan. But I will say this: thank you to the Canadians in Afghanistan, because they brought Timmy Hose with them, and I was able to get some Timmy Hose in Afghanistan. So, but no, yeah, I mean, we got to see a little bit, but as far as that goes, I didn't get to see anything at in any of the combat zones the way I got to see like Toby Keith and some like music artists that were coming through. But I do enjoy the fact that was something that they made it a point to do, and a lot of that actually comes back from, it reminds me of the times of when we had characters like Sergeant Slaughter and the Iron Sheik, and we go back to early Desert Storm, and it was like they were kind of fighting it out, and then you had, who was the other one? Nikolai Volkov. So I'm probably throwing names out that most people don't remember or understand. But if you're a WWE historian, you have to know these names. You have to know that where some of these characters come from. As a matter of fact, watch this.
Oh yeah. Tommy's also a Monster G.I. Joe fan, Eric, so I think you know who he's going for.
Oh yeah, attention!
I got my Sergeant.
There he is, the legend, the absolute legend, Sergeant Slaughter. You can't go wrong with him. And
he actually came with his own little teeny tiny action figure.
That's great.
But yeah, but I enjoy the fact that they still do that they still go and do a salute to the salute to service, the same way that the NFL does with the sideline gear that they have, the personnel wear, which is like a camouflage or something that's military themed. But I'm not going to ramble on anymore, but let me ask you, Eric, when it comes to the athleticism that you're talking about now with everybody that's in the WWE now, do you think it's better, or do you think it's on par, or do you think it's a little bit below than where it was, say, back in the Attitude Era, or even back in the quote unquote steroid times? Do you think it's better? Do you think it's cleaner?
I think 100% it's a lot better. If you watch Saturday Night Main Event matches from the 80s, the matches tend to be they're slower than the matches of today, and that's the wrestlers. There's a lot of holds, a lot of slow movements. It was more of a drawn out process. these days they are ridiculously fast. I think of Braun Breaker, who's the son of Rick Steiner and nephew of Scott Steiner. This guy is a former NFL player. And when he starts moving, sort of goes between the ropes, runs back and forth between the ropes, like he is going ridiculously fast. There's a moment in last night's Rumble, they had some popular streamer, something Ice Speed or whatever. He's on there. This guy is, I mean, he's not a wrestler. This is where, you know, this is the Drew Carey spot, as I like to call it, where you have some a celebrity or someone not really a wrestler but comes into the match just for fun. He was doing his thing, and you could see Braun running back and forth. And Braun's a big guy, like he's a big hulking guy, but he is moving like you wouldn't believe. And he just speared this poor kid. The guy, like literally, you know, as Jim Ross would say, "Oh my God, they broke him in half." So it was quite a sight to see. Another wrestler you wouldn't expect, but maybe not speed, but agility. His name is Jacob Fatu, and he's part of the Ahawani family dynasty of wrestlers from the Samoan area. This guy could hop onto a top rope like you wouldn't believe. And he's again another big hulking dude, but he's just so athletically, just athletically gifted that he could just hop onto the ropes and just easily do a moonsault. Well,
and the thing that kills me about Fatu is that not only is he a tall guy, he is I'll say thick gentleman. He's not, you know, not fat or anything, but he is definitely not like the super toned Hulk Hogan-esque guy you would expect doing these kind of moves or anything like that. He is literally kind of looks like he's just the guy that showed up, and he is a freaking animal to that point.
And he is picking up steam like you wouldn't believe in WWE. Fans are totally digging him. And I mean, he was making a big name for himself on some of the sort of the smaller type promotions. I remember when he debuted on SmackDown, I went onto YouTube and just found a video, 1 hour of highlights from other promotions that he's done. And I was hooked. I was absolutely hooked. And he's got a great promo style too. It's very poetic, got a nice hip hop vibe to it as well. So he's going up. I mean, that's the thing about the current roster right now. There are so many guys who are worthy of getting that top spot. And there's been times where you haven't had that many options, but right now it's literally an embarrassment of riches that they have on the WWE roster.
To backpedal on to Tommy's thing about here of the generations and the differences, I think you actually hit one thing there pretty solid, Eric, is the fact that there is these generations in these spots that have an insane amount of talent, having a bunch of people that can be the guy that carries the company. And I think the one that you talk about the most, obviously, would be the Attitude Era. You have the, you know, I'll say the Ruthless Aggression Era with John Cena, who had other just plethora and embarrassment of riches when you had Cena, Orton, all these guys. Then you had The Rock, Triple H, Austin, all these guys in the Attitude Era. And then going back further, you ended up having a time where you had Hulk Hogan, Macho Man, Andre the Giant, all of these monsters. But there's about 4 generations that I think that had those big chunks to it, where they could have been, any one of them could have stepped up and ran the company basically from the championship level. And I think the current roster is in 100% in that same swing right now too, Eric.
Oh, absolutely. Absolutely. And full credit to the folks behind the stage. So we mentioned Triple H. Triple H is the chief content officer right now for WWE, and he is doing a phenomenal job. He's pushing all the right buttons, and he's telling the stories the right way. Nobody's getting rushed. Nobody's getting buried. And it's captivating, absolutely captivating, the stuff that we're seeing.
Yeah. Tommy, you look like you had another question in mind.
So, no, well, I do, but something that I've been kind of looking at, and I knew one, and I know that we come from I know in Canada there's a long line of great wrestling talent that you know was showcased. There's also one in particular I don't necessarily want to mention who he is. I think you all know who I'm talking about, who committed a serious crime, but it was, I guess you can say, it was a lot of it came from
CTE.
The use of steroids and CTE and stuff like that. And you know, and I don't want to take away anything from that, but I also don't. I'm not comfortable saying the person's name because of how heinous the crime was.
Yep.
But but thinking of other wonderful, awesome superstars that have come, and I looked up and I knew of one of just personally of Rochester, New York, China, who tragically passed away herself. But she was from Rochester, New York. But another one
new
that
roster right now too.
Who's that?
The War Raiders, Eric. Ivar's from Rochester, New York.
Ivar, and I know it's not Rochester, but it's Buffalo. Lex Luger was from Buffalo.
Yep.
Correct.
Yeah.
But now, if we want to go back into history, Gorilla Monsoon was from Rochester. but another one that tragically passed away, and I believe it was from cancer. And he was a star that was on the rise. Was Brody Lee. He was from, I believe he was from Webster, which is a suburb of Rochester. So basically Rochester. And I remember when he was still around, we have a Hall of Fame DJ here in Rochester by the name of Brother Weeze, and he actually had Brody Lee in his studio, before he passed away, and he fantastic guy, a great guy, great gimmick that he had. And but yeah, I mean, it's sometimes you wonder, it's like, these talents that are out there, and then sometimes the stars just kind of fade away and everything. Is there anybody in particular, whether it be historically or currently, is your number one, I like this person, I will always like this person, whether they're a heel or a jobber or a superstar? Who is it for you?
Okay, that's an easy one for me. It is The Rock. He is my guy. He's my number one guy. Bret Hart was once interviewed, and Bret Hart talked about 3 parts about how to be a great wrestler. One is your look, one is your athleticism, and one is your mic skills. And to me, The Rock was a 10 out of 10 on all of those. It still is a 10 out of 10. First of all,
because he's still in.
Athleticism, amazing. This guy would train like you wouldn't believe. Former football player, University of Miami, even tried out in the CFL here for the Calgary Stampeders. Didn't go so well, but there's that. And then obviously the look, the appearance. The funny thing enough is that when he first debuted on WWE television, the fans were not into it. The fans didn't like it. They didn't like
Get him out of here.
And it took a little bit of time, but then he turned heel, and as a heel, he won them over. And I would say, like, there's different eras of The Rock. My two, first of all, I love the Final Boss era, which is what he was doing in last year against Cody Rhodes and Seth Rollins, that whole WrestleMania, which was just a complete wild show. Amazing. Just the stuff he was doing as the Final Boss. And then second would be his Hollywood Rock era. So in 2002, he left to do movies, and fans were chanting, "You sold out," and all this kind of crap. He leaned into it. When he came back, he was this beautiful
100%
Hollywood star,
playing his guitar and everything.
Exactly. And that just he's great as a face. Absolutely love watching him as a face. But when he's a heel, my God, it is, as the kids say, cinema. Absolutely.
Yeah. And you talk about somebody that can riff with a microphone. Oh my God. Those battles with him and John Cena during that Hollywood era were hilarious.
Yep. And The Rock also has a little bit of a Canadian connection, actually. Sorry to interrupt, but he does have a Canadian connection, which I'm super stoked about. His father has some Canadian roots. Soul Man Rocky Johnson.
I did not know that.
Man. Yeah. So I don't know if he was born, but Rocky Johnson lived in Canada. So there is some Canadian connections to The Rock. And of course, Rock is also part of the Ahawani family dynasty. So lots of lineage.
I think I have to give you a chance here to shine a little bit, because you have one of the best Hall of Famers in wrestling history that's from Toronto, and actually watched a lot of these wrestlers we're talking about, and then became one of the Attitude Era staples. And I'm assuming you know who I'm talking about, Eric, but Edge.
No, that's or Cope. He's now known as Cope on AEW. And just to clarify, Rocky Johnson was born in Amherst, Nova Scotia. But
I
anyway,
did not
yeah,
know that.
Adam Copeland came from Orangeville, Ontario, which is just a little north of Toronto. And he was a big wrestling fan. And his best friend, Jay Riso, who we know as Christian Cage or Christian, grew up. They dreamed about wrestling, professional wrestling, and wrestling in what was WWF at the time. And he trained with a gentleman by the name of Ron Hutchison. And they traveled. They would do tours all the way up to the Canadian Arctic, in the Northwest Territories, the Yukon, and then eventually, they made their way, and they were a very successful tag team. And
They're a fun one to watch too.
Oh
I still
yeah,
get every once in a while things that you don't see anymore. And being here from Rochester, New York, the capital of all things that used to be for photo photography with film.
oh
The
yeah.
30 seconds posterity shots where they would just sit in the ring and be like, and you get to take pictures, and then he turned 90 degrees.
Oh,
They would do that in
exactly.
the ring all the way around.
They would get in, they'd be like, yeah, we're going to pose for exactly 8.75 seconds. So get out your cameras. And it is something I was at a couple of shows back in the day where it would be like mad flash bulbs going off everywhere. But they were a great tag team, and then they kind of went their separate ways, and they've had phenomenal solo careers. Edge became the Rated R superstar, sort of a real life affair behind the scenes, became a storyline, and he was able to turn that into something, and just an absolute legend. And he's now in AEW wrestling, and I do miss him. I do miss him in WWE. I wish he was kind of back in WWE, but him and Christian are doing a phenomenal job in AEW.
Just to mention, because I gotta say, so we were left the show by talking about the Royal Rumble. Edge might have the best comeback at a Royal Rumble pop ever.
Oh yes,
because he was gone for how many years with his neck injury?
Oh, over 10, over 10.
Yeah, and
there
he is, and he's back.
Not only that, but Edge has one of the. I mean, this is another thing we should talk about: the theme entrances, and just like all it takes is a certain note or a certain sound or a certain voice.
Yeah,
right. With Edge, you hear "You Think You Know Me," and just everyone loses their minds. And
not to mention having Alter Bridge. That song by Alter Bridge is a rockin' tune to begin with, and then having that on top of it, boom.
And Edge at one time was known as Mr. Money in the Bank. He was the first one to really take advantage of a cash in and win a title. He did it a couple times. So, there's and just recently there was this great meme going around Instagram where fathers or just people would see, someone close to them in their family opening up a present. The present happens to be a title belt. And all of a sudden you hear the song in the background, and they're kind of doing what Edge would do, where this is where I wish my camera was working, where you kind of hold the hair back and he's about to spear someone. And oh my God, it was just hilarious.
Flip it back.
Yeah, but just a great
he had
great
a
music
mane back in the day. So maybe that one spins us off into a fun one, because wrestling is sports entertainment. You hit a great key spot there of what it's outside those mic skills, the wrestling and the look, right? It is about the presentation. Edge had that in spades. And I'm going to quote Triple H here from an interview that I heard recently. I think I was watching the Vince McMahon documentary, which is, by the way, crazy. Triple H is on there saying that the glass break from Stone Cold Steve Austin was the freaking, sound of a generation there for a little bit. This is why, I'm on my way to work, glass breaks, my boss, whatever it might be. And that's basically what he got to do for an extended amount of time for years on the TV.
I mean, that's the classic stimulus response theory. This is like our generation's version of Pavlov's dogs. You hear that one sound and our mouths start to water, or in this case, we hear the glass break and we just go nuts because we know who's coming out. And it's not just the glass break, or it's if you smell, you hear that part, you go, or even with like CM Punk with his entrance, the Cult of Personality, just that little distortion you hear at the beginning, everyone just loses it. Yeah.
Yeah.
Roman Reigns has the drums, doo-doo, and then everyone knows what that's all going to be.
Well, Triple H, didn't he have Lemmy?
Oh yeah, he had Motorhead.
Yeah, Motorhead. He had Motorhead. Time to play the game.
There it is. But that was awesome. But that's the piece that goes along with this, because not is it all these wonderful things that we were talking about. It's that spectacle, and when you're able to take that little piece from these things to go over that next piece to it, it's incredible. One of my current favorite ones is still hearing Seth Rollins' entrance, and all you hear is "Get down!" and then flames everywhere, and then heavy metal guitars and dun 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 dun. It's just perfect. So,
And it's a
but
very
there are so
it's a
many of
very
them.
interactive theme entrance because the fans have a certain role they play when that music hits, what they have to do. So, and I mean that's
And
you
that's a
guys
fun one.
last year WWE did some shows overseas in Paris and a few other places too, Germany. And what they were doing is they were actually singing the theme songs as well. They had chants and
That was
everything. The
wild.
European crowd.
I remember that, especially Cody Rhodes is I forget the name of the band, but the song's called Kingdom.
Yeah, I think it's
Is it?
Downstate. Downstate?
Yes.
Yeah.
Something like that, but it's a great song. But and that's the other thing. There's original songs, there's just rockin' tunes. I was always wondering why Alexa Bliss never came out the Bowling from Soup's version of the song that they made for her. Alexa Bliss. And why can't every girl be like Alexa Bliss? I don't know. But it's fun.
I don't think
So,
everybody
Eric,
remembers who Bowling for Soup is.
I think
And
it's
not
funny because they popped up with a new song on my phone earlier tonight. I'm like, no shit.
And then back in the 90s and 2000s, WWE would release CDs of their theme entrances, and those were huge sellers. You know, you had to
remember
get
those CDs?
Yeah, of
CDs
course.
were a thing.
Somewhere buried
be
in
able to own your
my
music.
somewhere in my home, I've got Volume 4, WWE the Music Volume 4. I've got the original one, which had like HBK. There's another song I love, "Sexy Boy" by
HBK.
Shawn Michaels. And I've got John Cena's album, Basic Thugonomics. So, or is it Time Is Now or Basic Thugonomics? Anyway, I have them.
Oh, that actually brought me another
WWE
one.
music.
Rev Theory voices for Randy Orton.
Yeah, that's another good one. Oh my god.
Okay,
Great
and then
band
I'll call
together.
the elephant in the room. Okay, Kid Rock, American Badass.
Yeah.
For the Undertaker for a bit.
Yep.
Yep.
So
They can't figure out what to do with this theme song when it comes back on anymore because they, the big thing with him is obviously hear that bong from the gong and everything.
Yeah,
and
to
then
me-
all of a sudden you're gonna know and everything
to
else.
me, that was prime old school Undertaker, and I loved that. I love that gimmick, and even the pseudo like satanic kind of version of the Undertaker and his acolytes. That was kind of a cool gimmick. And then once he did go into the American Badass, he kind of was like appealing to a lot of, kind of like that, that biker rednecky kind of group, the all American kind of, and it is fun. But to me, I will always go back to that old school Undertaker where he was just this, menacing character that you never really saw his face until after he freaking did the tombstone pile driver and puts you out of your misery, so that gives me a question for both of you, and I don't care who goes first at this point.
Yes, go first.
So it's a two-part question. One, who is your favorite heel or face manager that would come out with the talent, and what is your all-time favorite finishing move besides the Hulk Hogan leg drop, which apparently nobody was able to get up from?
Except for the Ultimate Warrior.
Not for the Ultimate Warrior because he was damn wild, man, and just go. Anyway, you go first, Eric.
Favorite manager? Well, I've got to go with the wise man, the legendary Paul Dangerously, Paul Heyman, his impact behind the scenes is just as important as what he's done on camera, but just the way he can hype up a person and how he can elevate someone. Like Roman Reigns, my God, like Roman Reigns. If it wasn't for Paul Heyman, I don't know if Roman Reigns has got the popularity that he has right now. So he's definitely that would be the best manager in the world for me. And then a finishing move, I've always liked the pedigree because if that's a move I could do. right? Put him there, and
Triple H can do it. I can do it.
It's an easy move to pull off. Rock bottom would be a second one, please. It would be a second.
I was waiting for you to say the rock bottom.
Yeah,
but no, the pedigree actually is a really good one. What's the one? What's Steve Austin's?
That would be the Stunner.
The Stunner, the Stone Cold Stunner.
That'd be my favorite because it can come out of nowhere.
Yeah.
Which is it's a really close one in my book for me because it's the Stone Cold Stunner or it's the RKO with Randy Orton, because the RKO literally can come out of nowhere, and that might be one of the most crazy highlights I still watch in WWE and still go. And that was Seth Rollins went to go give him his patented stomp. So Randy Orton was down, bend over and on his knees, and he comes to go slam his head down into the mat. Randy Orton goes rigid and basically chucks Seth Rollins way up in the air, catches him when he comes back down in the finishing move, and he's just done. So
there was another one. I think Evan Bourne was coming off the top rope, and Randy met him with an RKO.
Yeah, he was coming at him for like a frog splash or something, right? And he catches him in the move instead.
Yeah,
which ironically is really just Diamond Dallas Page's Diamond Cutter.
Yeah,
but he found a way to take that to that next level of just ridiculousness with it, which is what a lot of them do. Honestly, they find fun ways to one up each other's moves over the years and everything. That's why you do see people recycle certain finishing moves over the years. Like Kevin Owens is a current wrestler that uses the Stunner to his advantage too. So
the pride of Maryville, Quebec.
There you go.
Yep.
I'm not sure if he's much pride these days. He's kind of acting like a dick.
I'm digging it. I'm actually digging what he's been doing. He almost got into a fight with Matthew McConaughey a couple weeks ago.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
But he's one of those ones that can play hippity hop with that freaking line of being a heel and a face. He can be the guy you're rooting for, and then the next day be the guy that you hate because of what Kevin Owens can do with that line and how he plays around with that. So, but that's the nature of the beast. You don't get many characters in WWE don't do the John Cena route where they are always the good guy their whole entire career. And seeing he's retiring this year, I don't think that's going to change anytime soon.
Yeah. Although there was John Cena was talking to Chris Van Vliet, who's a well-known wrestling podcaster. And apparently at one time, I think it was 2012 or 2013, they had something on the table for him to turn heel. He had a whole new uniform, and he had even recorded a new hip-hop song for his theme entrance, and it didn't happen. They went in a different direction, but it was on the table at one point.
It's probably good. I think that the career for him when that line would have it wouldn't have had the same luster. I don't think there's something to saying it's the same kind of like with a baseball player and their whole their team their whole career, right? Like Cal Ripken was always a Baltimore Oriole. Tony Gwynn was always a Padre. John Cena is always the good guy.
And hopefully Vladdy Guerrero is always a Blue Jay.
Hopefully. Well, that's a Thursday
Rock show.
I agree. So
Craig, who was your manager? Who was the manager?
I don't know if the Undertaker becomes the Undertaker without Paul Bearer. He helped sell that character just by carrying the urn around and having that extra, just oddity to it, right? This is a dead man walking around. Is it what it got sold at? Not just the Undertaker, right? So I wonder how much that persona doesn't become what it does without him. And I will back up what Eric mentioned with Paul Heyman, because the other fun part that maybe the casual wrestling fan misses out on, Paul Heyman was ECW. He was the reason that, you had another brand that was pushing the edge and basically feeding the pipeline to the WWF at the time that became the Attitude Era, or at least the extending parts to it. Mick Foley, Stone Cold Steve Austin, Ron Van Dam, all these guys came from ECW and eventually fed the WWE. And Stone Cold Steve Austin actually had gotten kicked out of WCW. He was injured. And
he was fired, actually.
Yeah.
He was fired.
Paul Heyman knew him.
Yep.
said, "Come on over here. I don't even give a shit if you're hurt. Here's a microphone," and he just let him vent.
Yeah, Paul
about
Heyman.
the bullshit that happened. Go ahead.
Paul Heyman managed Steve Austin when he was in WCW, and then
That's
when
right.
he got fired, he brought over Paul. Obviously, brought Austin over, and it was a short run, but it was very memorable. And if you look at some of those old ECW promos that Steve Austin cut, you start to see the Stone Cold character. It's so
Yeah.
you can sort of slowly see the origins of it.
And
And
next thing you
there's
know,
some
he
great
gets
stuff.
the nickname from a stupid conversation with his wife at the time.
Well, he
Told him
was
to come inside for being cold. You're gonna get Stone Cold out here. Come on in the house.
Well, before he was Stone Cold in WWE, he was the ringmaster. He was with Ted DiBiase, and they called him ringmaster, and well, that didn't last very long.
Yeah. And then next thing you know, he's on the, winning King of the Ring against Jake the Snake Roberts. After a bunch of Bible verses and stuff were said with his character at that time, and he comes out and goes, "Oh, you got your Job 3:16. Well, Austin 3:16 just says I just whooped your ass," and then fire, gone, rocket ship.
There you go. Maybe one of the best, maybe the #1 wrestling T-shirt in the world, the Austin 3:16.
To this day,
I got to admit,
even like I'd still buy one.
Oh yeah,
I got to admit, I do like the part where you were saying, Craig, of Paul Bearer. I like it when the managers actually become part of the mythos. I mean, Paul Bearer came out, he had makeup on too, like he was dead. He was supposed to be the funeral director and everything. But I like the idea of creating more of the mythos and everything. But I'll go old school when it comes to managers, and I'll say Captain Lou Albano. Because not only did Captain Lou was a manager, but he also, some of you may not know this, but he also played Super Mario on the Super Mario Cartoon Hour back in the 80s. And
wasn't he also in a Cyndi Lauper video at one time
yes,
too?
Girls just want to have fun.
Yep, he was the dad in that video, but he actually got Cyndi Lauper involved with the WWF at the time, and she became a pseudo manager for Wendy Richter, and it was funny because they were trying to do this promo of rock and wrestling, kind of like a crossover and everything, and a lot of people say that as talented as Cyndi Lauper was, having her involved in the world of the WWF and pro wrestling actually hurt her career. And, so a lot of people, and I go back to Brother Weeze even said it really hurt her. And he actually loves Cyndi Lauper, but I think she's transcended her career a little bit more so now than some of the others of that day. But yeah, I mean, I just remember Captain Lou being the live action Super Mario for the Super Mario Brothers Cartoon Hour.
Actually,
back in the day.
a fun fact about that show. So Lou Albano played Mario. The actor who played Luigi was a gentleman by the name of Danny Wells. His real name is Jack Westelman, and he's not a direct relative of mine, but he's a distant relative.
Oh,
so like
what the heck?
Yeah, twice over, 3 times, twice removed, 3 times put back in, that kind of thing. But
cousin's brother, former roommate,
something like that, exactly. Yeah. So there you go. Some wild connections here tonight on the show.
That's awesome. That's awesome. Well, at least now I know that I'm not the only one that knows little tidbits of information or trivia like that.
Yeah. So useless trivia fun, right? But to that point, I got one I got to sneak in here because I think this will be a fun one for all of us to go around the table here for and give our answers to. Who is your favorite good guy and who is your favorite heel of all time? Who's your face and who's your heel, Mr. Heck?
Okay, so Rock would definitely be my favorite heel. And Rock was kind of also my favorite face as well. But if I wanted to pick another face character, this is a good one because I'm going through the recesses of my mind. Oh, Kurt Angle was such a good heel too. Oh, I really loved watching Kurt Angle.
Horribly good.
That was a good one. I'm just Let's think. Eddie Guerrero was a great face. I enjoyed watching Eddie. Rey Mysterio, that's another great face character. Always love
I think
those
another guy
luchadors.
that's always pretty much the good guy too, Rey
Yeah,
Mysterio.
exactly. And then let me come up with a third one here. Another good face character. Always the type of always the good guy. Yeah, Cena. I would put Cena in there. Although I fell in love with Cena when he was the heel cutting the rap promos first, but then he kind of so I
Yeah,
don't
he
know.
was kind of nudgy at the beginning, right?
Yeah.
Not the greatest. I won't say completely heel, but he was definitely meant to be that edge character, right?
Yeah. And yeah, I mean some
So-
of the best faces were heels originally. I
Yeah.
always like the Hurricane as well. Hurricane Helms. Shane Helms.
There's a name I
Yeah.
don't hear as much anymore.
Oh, Bret Hart. How could I be so silly? Bret Hart. Bret Hart was a great face.
There you go.
Yeah.
Tommy,
Yeah.
I know you what's your generation piece on that whole thing? Who do you think as far as villain and good here?
So, the funny thing is that, and Eric kind of throws it out there that a lot of the good faces started out as heels and whatnot. So, but I would have to say that my favorite heel, because to me, he took it to the next level, and he was, let's just put it this way, even when he had his group and by himself, he was the person you hated to love and loved to hate, and that was Triple H. Triple H. I mean, when
point.
you think about it, I mean, he comes out and there was a group that even when he was the bad guy and he'd have the sledgehammer and everything, it's like he was just menacing. And you knew he was going to take out that sledgehammer and he was going to shove it into somebody's stomach and he was going to do some dirty, rotten stuff, but it happened. And then when he had the group of Degeneration X, it was just like, okay, this is fun. This is fun. I hate these guys, but I love them at the same time because they're funny. And I would have to go with Triple H and Degeneration X as my heels, but the heels that you love. But and the same thing is, and my face, which would also be the part of that group, is Shawn Michaels. Shawn Michaels and his finishing move, Sweet Chin Music, very iconic, having a lot of iconic moments with Shawn Michaels. I mean, he's the guy that took Ric Flair out. I mean, I can remember him getting ready to do his move and mouthing the words "I love you," and
I'm sorry.
and it wasn't I'm sorry to was it that was the Montreal screw job, wasn't it? But that was not Ric Flair. That was
No, that was Bret
That
Hart.
was Bret
Bret Hart.
Yeah.
So but that's, to me, that he had a lot, maybe just as many iconic moments in the WWE than a lot of some of the other superstars that we've talked about, like The Rock and The Undertaker. And I'll actually throw out an honorable mention, which would be Mick Foley as a whole, because he had so many different personas. But I think my favorite persona of his was Mankind.
Mm-hmm.
It's just you didn't know what to think of the guy, and
I loved every minute of it. That might have been still my favorite WWE Championship win ever. Was when he finally won. So
yeah, but he also had that moment where, I mean, he was like the generator of the extreme matches, where they would throw out thumbtacks onto the mat and
throw him off a Hell in a Cell.
Hell in a Cell.
Throw him off the Hell in a Cell. Exactly. And those iconic matches, they're what, regardless of how new it is and everything, those are the matches that constantly get shown in those retrospectives whenever they're doing a WrestleMania or doing a Hell in a Cell match or stuff like that. Those iconic matches constantly are shown to this younger generation who are getting into, pro wrestling and WWE. So that's me.
And you know, HBK,
So,
Shawn Michaels. Sorry, Craig. He's
no, go ahead.
HBK is a unique wrestler and a unique performer because he's one of the few that has transcended generations. Because
Mhm.
he started in the sort of the original Hulk Hogan rock and wrestling era, and he's gone through sort of the next generation and the Attitude Era. He's always had a place in the Ruthless Aggression era, and even now today he's running NXT, and he was on the recent Saturday Night's Main Event giving a sweet chin music to Kevin Owens, which making us all think, oh, maybe Sean's coming out of retirement. But he's one of
So
those few
It was
that
a
can
nice one too.
transcend. It was.
Yep.
correct me if I'm wrong, but in his early years, he was actually in a tag team called the Rockers with Marty Jannetty.
Yep.
Am I right?
Yep.
Yes.
Yeah.
Look at you, Jack. So I'm gonna go into mine, and it's one that I can't believe that none of us have brought up in this whole thing. And then to me, I'm thinking that he's the ultimate heel of all time because people actually literally tried to kill him repeatedly, stab him, and this is Roddy Piper.
hmm
And,
Oh yeah.
and so I don't think you can be more of a heel than I don't know if you've heard this story, and he was telling this story up to the day he died, that there was a point in his career when he was feuding with Hogan and a bunch of other people, and he actually basically pissed off the country of Mexico. And he goes, okay, fine, I'll do the apology on the air, not a big deal. So he goes on whatever the show was at that time, and he goes out with a guitar or something, and then he literally starts saying, I'm ready to go, it's time to sing, I'm going to do my apology, I'm going to sing the Mexican national anthem for all of you.
Oh
And
God.
he starts singing the Mexican hat dance instead of with a guitar, and la cucaracha instead of goofing around with anything else. And they're throwing cans at him, all these things. And he was telling that story. You can't be a definition of a heel and not have a story like that where you just literally set the world on fire to make the good guy look good. And I got into Roddy when he was in WCW, but then I loved the character, so I went back and had to watch
Deep
all this
dives.
stuff, and I got sucked down the rabbit hole, and I loved it when I was a kid watching him. And finding things with Roddy Piper at the birth of the internet was not exactly the most easy thing in the world to find.
Do
But
you guys?
go
Sorry,
ahead.
did you guys know that Roddy Piper and Jesse Ventura were in a short-lived dramatic series called Tag Team? A couple of former wrestlers who went to become cops. And it was apparently a show that ran in the early '90s. It didn't
I'd
survive,
love
but
it.
there's
I'm gonna have to
clips
find that one
online you
now.
could see. But it was called Tag Team, and it's Roddy and it's Jesse, and Jesse's dressed as Jesse, and Roddy looks like Roddy, and they went
So
for
this
again.
has to be the preconception notion from the Major League Two from our baseball fun here, Eric. When we're talking about the they had that movie that Willie Mays Hayes was in with Jesse the Body Ventura. It was White Lightning and something else. I can't remember what it was called. It was what Willie Mays did in the off season between the two Major League movies, apparently. So,
Oh, no kidding.
yeah, it was in the beginning of the movie. He was showing Rick Vaughn and everybody in the beginning of Major League Two. It's a funny clip, but Jesse the Body Ventura's in it too, and it was almost that same kind of like tag team thing that you mentioned.
And Jesse Ventura has been on the new WWE brought back Saturday Night's Main Event back in December, and they did one in January, and they had Jesse on, and he hasn't missed a beat. It is still Jesse.
He's very with it.
He's
And
on
still
it.
Jesse.
Yeah.
The
That's
former
awesome.
senator of Minnesota, correct?
Governor, yes.
Yep, governor. That's what it was. So, but yeah. But as far as my favorite face of all time, I don't know if I can really call him a face, but everybody loved him, and he was obviously fighting, I'll say, one of the other better heels of all time in Vince McMahon himself, and that is Stone Cold Steve Austin. You were
Oh,
rooting
great
for
one.
him every week to do something wild and crazy to get under Vince McMahon and his family's skin, and it was epic. All new wrestling stuff, really good, really cool. Obviously, when I got to grow up and watching and pretended my parents didn't see everybody walking around going like this. And sorry, didn't mean to be that guy. We can blur that out later.
The Attitude Era definitely made him the household name that he was. I mean, and we go back to him saving Stephanie McMahon from the Undertaker when he was doing the satanic thing. I mean, there was like it seemed like there was no holds barred during the Attitude Era. I mean, but I'll throw out one of the ultimate heels was Vince McMahon himself. Yep. Making people kiss his ass in the middle of the ring, but I will have to throw out an honorable mention when it comes to asses is Rikishi.
Yeah.
I always love the Rikishi.
Yeah. Rikishi, there was a great one. And he actually ran over Stone Cold Steve Austin at one point.
And then he was also a little too cool for school.
Yep. Yeah. The old days. Yeah. And now his sons are just absolutely all three sons are just killing it right now.
Awesome.
And they're just doing an amazing job in WWE. And there's I think there might be a couple other brothers coming up very soon.
That's what it sounds like. So on that note, Eric, we're just over the hour mark. I want to make sure we get any topics you would like to ask off of your skin, and then obviously your shameless self-promoting bit here at the end of the show.
You know what? I've had an absolute blast talking with you guys. It's been a real thrill and a real honor, and I thank you for that. And just remember, like the great thing about pro wrestling, because some people still say, "Oh, why are you watching that fake stuff? It's so silly. It's so dumb. It's this. It's that." Listen, first of all, there's nothing fake about it. They're actually making contact with each other. They're getting slammed on a, there's padded, but it's a hard surface. These guys are and men and women, they're putting their bodies on the line. And I try to remind myself when I'm watching wrestling is that, they're what you see, all these superstars in WWE, what they do took them years and years and years to perfect. And they've made a lot of sacrifices, family time, social time. They've spent many lonely nights, many sleepless nights, and they do it all, and they risk their bodies just so that we can have a good time and we can enjoy that. So I really, really appreciate that. And I love the escapism and I love the spectacle of it. The world's going. Sorry, go ahead.
Finish your thought.
Oh, I was just saying, the world's absolutely crazy right now. I'm Jewish, and there's a lot of issues being Jewish these days. Canada and the US aren't getting along, which reminds me, I hope you guys aren't charging me any tariff fees for being on the show.
Just the standard 25%.
Yeah, the standard. Yeah, have your leaders call my leaders. But you know what? It's just to be able to put on. Here in Canada, we have Netflix for all, and even if it's AEW or TNA Impact, just to put on these shows and just not have to think about what's going on out in the world. I'm just so grateful to have that, and I really appreciate it. And when it comes to wrestling, it's just that classic story of good versus evil, and I eat it up with a spoon every time I watch it.
So I have to ask, you mentioned the athleticism, the hard work, and the it's not fake thing, because have you seen the show that they did for The Rock for his quote unquote childhood?
Young Rock.
I forget the name of it.
I never watched. I didn't watch it, but I'm definitely aware of it.
I enjoyed it thoroughly, and it is fun. And to the same point, it's escapism. It was a great story. He is himself and his family have a great story. But the first episode, and this is what hooked me into it, because they have all these great actors and actresses playing all the real life characters, obviously, right? And they had everybody in, Rocky Johnson's apartment, and they're just hanging out, goofing around, talking, and they're telling stories from different matches, and I kicked this guy's butt and all this kind of stuff, right? And young Rock is just sitting there watching TV, laying on his stomach, kicking his feet, going, "Oh, it's all fake anyway." And Andre the Giant walks over to him and just clap. You don't say the F word in this family.
That reminds me of John Stossel when he went up to Dave Schultz saying, "Some people say this is fake," and Dave just gives him the biggest slap you've ever seen. Is that fake for you? Did that feel fake to you?
Yes, exactly.
Yeah.
Still, they're 100% athletes. That if you're gonna classify it, I've had some recent conversations. They're closer to being stuntmen and stunt women than they are anything as far as the actual act of the match. It is what it is, but it is fun, to your point. There's great stories, there's great characters, larger than life stuff. You talk about a kid seeing Hulk Hogan for the first time when they were younger, or like you see in The Rock, like you mentioned, you see that character and that larger than life persona, it is going to carry and it's gonna suck you right into it. And I'm glad that men and women alike these days get that for younglings to be able to see that. That's the thing I was loving about when my daughter got into it. I'm like, oh my God, I don't remember the women doing this stuff when I was a kid.
Yeah.
and I'm so glad that she had that role model to be able to go with the Alexa Blisses, Becky Lynch, and stuff like that too. So good stuff.
Yep.
All right, Tommy, you got any more questions burning?
I do not have any more questions. Again, Eric, this is obviously a subject that we could have, with all of our guests, we have to do a follow-up show because there are a lot of things that we could have touched base, like the WCW crossover, when they kind of took over, and the ECW takeover. I mean,
we didn't talk about the Monday Night Wars at all.
No, we haven't even touched it.
No, and so I mean, this is a subject that I think is very near and dear to a lot of people's hearts, and we need to come back to it and talk about some of those things and some of the history stuff, because I mean, yes, we have the Google machines in front of us and we can come up with all these different history things, but what I like to do is I like to rehash the memories that I have and how I remember them, because maybe I misremember something, and we have the whole butterfly effect, and the Mandela effect. I remembered it this way, but Eric, you may remember it as a completely different way, so
Vince McMahon was a good guy.
I remember, so one of the things that I'd like to play off of is my own thoughts and memories, and try not to do, go into it and unless I'm looking for something completely specific. I like to just kind of shoot from the hip, if you will. But I am super stoked to have you on, Eric, and I'm glad, and hopefully we can do this again. I know that we have another person that should have been on tonight, so hopefully we can come back and say.
Don't worry, I'll bust his balls tomorrow morning at work.
But I'm actually very glad that we were able to do this episode finally, because this one was like going back into December we were supposed to be doing, or at least talking about doing this episode. So I'm glad that you finally were able to do it. And please, Eric, please continue to listen, because we love having your comments.
Oh, my pleasure. Yeah.
Anytime you have a topic you want to talk out, you are more than welcome.
Yeah,
great.
Yep.
Yeah, absolutely loved being here, and I absolutely love the show. I've listened to all of them. I'm right up to the Magic the Gathering. So I haven't done the Magic the Gathering episode, and I haven't done the game show episode, but they're queued up. I'm gonna get to them. And then Tommy, one other thing.
I highly recommend listening last week to the game show episode, because he was on point and knows way too many cheat codes for being able to get on a game show or be able to win some contests on your own. So make sure you listen to those, or at least do the wonderful videos I've been clipping up and putting on the internet for you.
Yes. And I was just going to say, Tommy, if I don't know if you're familiar with this gentleman, his name is Conrad Thompson, and he has a special network called the Ad Free Show Network. And it's a bunch of podcasts with retired former wrestlers and wrestling personalities. Probably the most popular podcast that he does on this network is called 83 Weeks, which is with Eric Bischoff. And
I've
he does that one. Yeah. So it's kind of like all kinds of different shows with these wrestlers where they obviously talk about the current product and their thoughts and feelings about it, but they also go back and discuss historical moments. So on 83 Weeks, they will talk about all kinds of different things, like they'll have an episode about Goldberg, or they'll have an episode about the invasion angle, or they'll do an episode about China, or the time Eric Bischoff had to do a kiss scene with Linda McMahon, like all these kinds of fun things. So I highly recommend you check that out, because if you're trying to look up and relive some of those histories, that's a good place to start.
Oh, definitely.
Yeah,
definitely. But yeah, no, we're glad to have you on, and again, you're always welcome. All
Thank
of our
you.
guests are always welcome.
Looking forward to the next chapter.
Yes, definitely.
That was the whole
We may
reason
have to have you.
I got this going, was to get fans on here, hear stories, talk out wonderful memories. If we happen to know the topic or not, that would be the wonderful question. And to that point, that's why we had our friend on, Will, that we talked Magic the Gathering on. Tonight was a topic that Tommy and I happen to be a little bit more versed on, obviously. And then Eric, having you as our expert here tonight was even better to have. So,
alleged
expert, as always.
Alleged expert, as I like to say.
Alleged.
So, before I do the promo here, Eric, tell everybody, because I know you have a website that you can promote. So tell everybody the shameless self-promoting bit here is all yours, my friend. Cheers.
Thank you. So if you like baseball, and if your team is the Toronto Blue Jays, you can come check out my blog. It's called Definitely Not Jays Talk, and the URL is dnjt.wordpress.com. I've got another article coming out this Friday, and it's about the newly acquired Miles Straw. And people have been a little bit hard on Miles Straw, Craig, because of what he's associated with. And I said, well, and I'm just going to throw out a few suggestions about that could sort of change our thoughts about Miles Straw.
Yeah, no, Miles Straw is a talent, and being linked to one of the frowny faces in recent Blue Jays history, and trying to acquire one of the best players from Japan, and he was the trade that happened this far in front of that, and it was part of the trade was due to financial fund to get international signing money, so it got very murky very quickly.
It got a lot of people up in arms.
Correct, because they were expecting this other thing to happen with Miles' trade. So, but cool stuff. Great work, Eric, as always. I look forward to reading it. So Blue Jays fans, obviously, feel free to look at his work, and we will have him back here soon. Welcome, and thank you very much for seeing us tonight on the TNC Random Fandom podcast. We greatly appreciate it. Make sure you listen in wherever you happen to get your podcasting pleasures for. We're there. And we are going to be here every Sunday evening for the short term here. It might be 7, 8 o'clock, depending on what the Super Bowl is next week. I don't know if I even give a shit, Tommy, but
I'm boycotting the Super Bowl. I am not watching the Super Bowl. The Super Bowl is basically dead to me right now. So
Taylor Swift Fest. But that's besides the point. I'm with you, so I will gladly record with you on Sunday next week. We'll find a topic. So we will be with you all next week. Go ahead.
Real quick, I have one thing. So before I put out anything right now, I put in an application to be a brand ambassador for a startup company called Gen X Refined, and it's a athletic gear. So I'm going to look into the package that they sent me to see if it's something that I truly want to be backing. And who knows, you may be hearing some commercials and getting some discount codes from me. So I'll let you know. But we'll go from there. But yep. So that's all I got going on at the moment. Besides, all the dance stuff that's going on. So
good stuff.
Yep.
All right. Well, take care, everybody. We hope you have a great weekend, and make sure you listen in live here every week on the TNC Random Fandom podcast, and catch us on Spotify and Apple until then, or on YouTube. We hope you have a great evening, and cheers.
Good night, everybody.